Welcome to the special transmission commemorating 70 years of Pakistan-China relationship. Yes, that relationship has seen strength and strength all the time. In 1950, when this relationship was established, both China and Pakistan were nation states. But since then, we have seen how China has grown and has impressed the world. And simultaneously, when you look at Pakistan, Pakistan has done well as well. And during all these years, Pakistan and China have stood together. They have always bolstered each other. And today we are going to we are celebrating this day because it is very important. It is one of the relationships. If you read Economist, if you read other newspapers or analysts, they keep on telling you that there might not be too much common between the two countries with the exception of strategic interests. But the two countries have always stood together. We are going to talk about all these matters in order to help us understand the reasons behind this relationship and how it has impacted both Pakistan and China. We have a very distinguished panel. We have with us Riaz Mohammad Khan Sahab, who is a former Foreign Secretary and has also been ambassador to China. Actually, together, when you put his experience of China together, it exceeds a decade. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Masood Khalid Saab, a career diplomat, former ambassador to China. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Nagmana Hashmi Sahiba also joins us, and she also has served in China. And I hope I'm not wrong that more than once you have served there. Right. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of the program. Riaz Mohammad Khan Sahab, if I ask you to start by actually qualifying how important this relationship is, how are you going to begin, sir?
This relationship is very fundamental for our foreign policy.
Right.
It is strong, and since I would say early 60s, it has, as you have said, moved from strength to strength.
Right.
One of the first things that happened which contributed to the trust between the two countries was the boundary agreement. China had, I think, experience of negotiations with India on boundary agreement, and it went nowhere.
Right.
In fact, it contributed to bitterness between the two countries.
Yeah.
We, in 1963, offered China a boundary agreement. Chinese, after a couple of months, they replied and asked us what would be the parameters for this negotiations.
Right.
And I must say, at that time, whoever was responsible, we gave a very serious reply, and we said that it would be the customary law, the ground realities, and mutual accommodation, which China thought was a serious response, and the two sides started negotiating, and we had within, I would say, 4 months, the boundary agreement, which was signed by Bhutto Saab at that time, in 1963. So from then onwards, this relationship has been very close. We do not have any mutual problems or conflict of interest. We have supported each other. We supported them in the United Nations. Their entry into the United Nations facilitated it. China, as soon as it became member of the United Nations, came to our help in 1972 when it exercised its first veto. Although China was always against the veto power because it was used against it, but it exercised that veto, and that in fact helped us negotiate the release of our POWs, which was very important for us. So it has been going on from then onwards. We have also very important cooperation in the economic areas.
Economic, military, security, diplomatic.
Strategic, the economic, almost every
Right. Foreign Secretary Sir, when we move forward, we are going to explore more rooms, more areas where we can cooperate. But let me bring in Masood Khalid sir. Sir, your take, your opening comment on the importance of this relationship and what binds us together.
Well, I think that this is perhaps the most important relationship as far as Pakistan's foreign relations are concerned. And if you see our official pronouncements, it is very clear, we say it very categorically, that we attach the highest importance to our relations. The cornerstone, relations with China are the cornerstone of Pakistan's foreign policy. And similarly, Chinese leaders also assert that they attach highest priority to relations with Pakistan in their foreign policy. So this is the official thread which explains what kind of relationship. And if you review the history of this relationship over the last 70 years, you will find this to be so true, because the relationship, of course, it has been nurtured over the last 7 decades, and when it started, we were in 2 different camps. We had joined the Western camp, and China was, of course, it's a communist country. So 2 different trajectories, yet we somehow found a convergence of interest, convergence of views, which gelled this relationship. And now I think it has moved from strength to strength, and it is multidimensional, multifaceted. And as Ambassador Riaz Muhammad Khan Sahab was saying, it covers lots of areas now. It's a very comprehensive and substantive partnership which we have. So I think its importance.
Right. As we move forward, I'm going to actually, bank on your domain knowledge to actually explore what areas we still need to actually mine and discover. But let me bring in Nagmana Hashmi Sahiba. Ma'am, you have studied China closely, especially you were posted there when COVID-19 actually also broke. So there is a lot to talk about the relationship between China and Pakistan. One aspect that keeps on fascinating everybody is that Soviet Union, being a communist country, used to export its communist model elsewhere as well. But China and Pakistan have worked together, and China has never tried to export its own revolution to Pakistan and always worked with Pakistan. So your opening remarks about the importance of relationship and what is keeping us together.
And thank you very much. When we started developing our relations with China, if you would recall, the relationship was also always talked about in terms of superlatives and adjectives like sweeter than honey and deeper than the oceans and higher than the Himalayas.
Poetry, actually.
Poetry. So there was really those were the initial days that sort of set the tone of what we were hoping the relationship would turn into. But today, if you look at how the Pakistan-China relationship is referred to, it is referred to as the unique all-weather strategic cooperative partnership. So the very fact that the terminology has actually transcended from adjectives into a strategic relationship and partnership speaks volumes of itself. Secondly, over the last 70 years, we've seen that this is a relationship which is not transactional. It is not a relationship that has sealed down. It has only one trajectory, and that is an upward trajectory.
Right.
And that is why they say that Pakistan-China relationship is unlike any other bilateral relationship anywhere else in the world, because it is based not only on the commonality of interest, but runs much deeper. It is actually a relationship which over the years we can say is now sort of ingrained in the ethos of the people of Pakistan. And if we look at the development of our relations and our cooperation, again we see that it is not only on political and strategic front that China has supported us and we have supported China, but in all different aspects of our relationship, particularly when the two countries are faced with difficult situations. That is also true in the in cases like earthquakes and floods, or in the case of COVID-19, as we have seen now, and that is what actually binds the people together.
Right. And as we move forward, I'm going to actually look at the nitty-gritty of that relationship. People-to-people aspect is something that perhaps we don't focus that much on. But what your reply actually reminded me of one of my earliest interviews that I actually undertook. Professor Stephen Cohen, 24 years ago, sir. And I asked him about relevance of morality in international system. And the first example that comes to his mind is Pakistan-China relationship. That there is a moral fiber that keeps the two people together. But Riaz Mohammad Khan Sahab, since we are talking about relationship, you will also notice while the two countries work together all the time, there is very little cultural understanding of China and Pakistan. Why is it that we haven't actually educated ourselves? I'm talking about people of Pakistan, about how China thinks, how its culture is, how its life is. Why exactly, sir?
Well, I think one basic reason is that we have been traditionally looking towards the West, or towards the Middle East. We never have really been looking towards the East, means Southeast Asia or China for that matter. For us, the East would be India, and we have our own perceptions about India. So the other thing is interaction, people-to-people interaction. Now, people-to-people interaction, earlier, of course, China was also not a very open society in the sense that there were not opportunities for tourists to come to Pakistan or Pakistani tourists to go to China. China was closed for foreigners except for the overseas Chinese. Overseas Chinese always had the right to come into China. And that's why China was an open society as compared to the Soviet society. Now, Pakistan, when China opened up in the 80s and tourism started, literally hundreds of thousands of Chinese tourists went to Southeast Asia, to Europe, Pakistan was not on the radar of those. For Pakistanis also the same thing. So this is the interaction which is important, which basically leads to understanding of the other culture. Secondly, the language is one other big hurdle, I would say.
And since you know this language, it is quite difficult, right? To master.
It is difficult, yes, it is difficult. Some of my colleagues know better Mandarin than myself. But sometimes I used to say in frustration that to know Chinese, you have to be born in China.
And they say that not everyone knows the full extent of alphabets of the language.
But I studied read all the classics of Chinese because they are available in English.
And that is most important thing. I'm coming to you, ma'am. But Masood Sahab, let me ask you about the cultural product. China produces movies, they are fascinating movies, it produces great literature, and in my childhood I read a lot of translated classics as well. But why is it that we haven't? There seems to be a lack of effort, or is it just because of the lack of imagination on the part of the translators that we haven't been able to bring that cultural product to this country? Because it is a fascinating culture, is it not?
Absolutely. I think it has been a missing link. I agree with you. And traditionally, we look towards west, or we did not focus on the east. I mean, this is a very powerful argument as to why we did not. And if you look at Pakistan-China relations in the initial years, initial decades, I think the focus was more on security and defense-related cooperation. But later on, in 70s, when China came forward and helped us establish this, industrial base in defense production industry in Taxila, and the former President Jiang Zemin came here and stayed in Pakistan for nearly, I think, 6 months. And so that is when the economic dimension of the relationship began to emerge. But I think we are making immense to promote people-to-people connectivity now. Now there is a greater awareness that we should learn each other's languages. Chinese is being taught in Pakistan and vice versa. When I was there, we had only, I think, 4 universities which were teaching Urdu language. And by the time I left in 2019, there were at least 10 or 11 universities, and Ambassador Nagmana would bear me out, which were teaching Urdu, and they had established full-fledged, Pakistan centers or South Asian center. So things have, I mean, both sides have realized that, when you have this kind of important relationship, strategic partnership, and yet people do not know as much. 155 million Chinese tourists visited abroad, overseas in 2019. This is the 2019 figure. And how many of them come here? You have great potential of, this tourism, Buddhist-related tourism, religious tourism, but unfortunately, we have not been able to package it effectively in
Package it,
Pakistan.
market it.
And then, of course, we faced this problem of terrorism, and nobody was prepared to come to Pakistan. I mean, although it is just next door, Karakoram Highway, Friendship Highway is there, which is a very, important link.
Right. I'm going to continue with the discussion, but I'm told that Sardar Masood Khan Sahab, President Azad Jammu and Kashmir, also joins us via Skype. The President Sahab, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Today's program is a bit unique because unlike the past discussions, we are talking about Pakistan-China relationship. And sir, you have actually served in China as a career diplomat, and you have known China. I understand that while you speak for Kashmir, you also know China well, this relationship well. So if you can enlighten us on the importance of that relationship and what is the dynamic at play here.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Pitafi. It's a pleasure to talk to you once again. I have a long association with China. I spent 8 years of my diplomatic career in China, first as a junior officer and then as ambassador. And I learned the Chinese language. So I have some smattering of knowledge about the country and the relations between Pakistan and China. So your question is very broad. I would say that in the 1950s, we started slowly, but our relationship took off in the 1960s, and we have never looked back since then, because our relationship has expanded to all important areas. We have a strategic relationship. We also have strong economic ties. Our trade is robust, and the defense cooperation between the two countries is the backbone of our China relations. So it's a multidimensional relationship. We use hyperbole to describe our relationship. We say, I mean, this is something which is said in the Chinese streets and Pakistani streets, that we are all weather friends, that our friendship is higher than mountains and deeper than oceans. And there are many other poetic expressions to encapsulate the depth and breadth of this relationship. So, and this relationship, it is also emphasized traditionally that it has survived many vicissitudes. There have been changes in international politics, but for the past 6 decades, there has been this resilience in our relationship, and it has gone from strength to strength, from height to height.
Right. Mr. President, another question about areas where we can further work together. I understand that there has been a strategic cooperation, there has been an economic cooperation as well, and thanks to BRI, CPEC, we are working very closely. But what are the areas which are still unexplored and we can actually work on them?
Well, I would say that, first let me emphasize the cardinal links that we have between the two countries. You mentioned some, but China has been a big contributor to the development of our peaceful nuclear program, as a matter of fact. So these nuclear energy plants that we have, they would have not been there if we didn't have this support from China. So China has been a lifeline for us. So is the realm of defense technology. We have depended very heavily on China, and now our relationship is collaborative, I would say, because we have developed shared platforms, and because of that, we have manufactured together a GF-17, many frigates, which are now with the Pakistan Navy, and many other programs. We also now cooperating with digital technology. This is very important for bilateral cooperation and also for the national development of Pakistan, including Pakistan's defense capability. So these are very important areas. Of course, economic and commercial relations are very important, but at the same time, we need to strengthen them further. Now, you said that the areas which have been neglected in the past, and I heard you while you were commenting on various aspects of Pakistan-China relationship, and you rightly pointed out that some of the areas which are deficient and which need more attention include people-to-people contact. I mean, because of COVID-19, you do not have two-way tourist traffic right now, but there should be tourism between the two countries. But
Right. Okay, there seems to be some connectivity problem. We are working to restore it. Let me come back to the studio. Nagmana Hashmi Sahibba, before going to the President, I was asking just of the guests about, the cultural product and Pakistani introduction to Chinese culture. Can you highlight certain parts?
I wanted to say that it's not only us who are cognizant of this fact that there is not that much understanding of each other's country in the masses. Sure. And I was very intrigued because last year one of my friends in China wrote an article, right, and the title was Best of Friends Who Are Strangers. And what they were trying to convey was that while the political, strategic, economic relationship is so strong, while we have stood by each other through good days and bad times, but still the cultural space is not there. Okay. The understanding of the people is not there. Okay. So while we are best of friends, the people are still like strangers. Right. So there is a great need to enhance that understanding of each other's cultures, of each other's countries, and sometimes small actions sort of deliver more than very big initiatives. Right. I was there in the early 80s, early 2000s. Okay. And still, when you traveled in public transport and all, they would still remember and talk about Pakistani films and Pakistani dramas, right, and how good the relationship is and that how we are best of friends. When I returned, I saw that missing. Okay. Okay. But with the event of COVID, and just one incident, Pakistan actually didn't have many PPEs or equipment to give to China. But just one gesture of Pakistan, that whatever we had, we actually donated the entire stock to
Right.
China.
At the very start.
At the very start.
Yeah.
And
that
that
was really.
captured the imagination of the entire nation and came in stark contrast with what the West and particularly India was trying to do to China, alienate them, stigmatize them, try to push them in a corner at a time when they thought that China's political system or its governance system or its health system may not be able to come up to the challenge.
Okay.
And then when you went out in the roads, you could see there was just one trend in China, whether it was their social media or newspapers or
television,
radios. It was just one trend.
Right.
That now we know who our good friends are.
Right.
And it is Pakistan who is our best friend.
Right.
So it was a small gesture. So I think there is a great need to enhance this people-to-people contact.
And the people of both countries are beautiful people. I've known Chinese friends as well. What amazed me all the time, sir, Ambassador Saab, is that they could speak Urdu. And while I wanted to actually try, I would end up only talking, using ni hao and nothing else. So perhaps there is more need to invest here as well, right, in this country. But let me ask you about the economic cooperation between the two countries. We are working together on CPEC. But the two countries, when it comes to bilateral relationship, China is our third most important trading partner. And we work on FTAs. And every time it seems that Pakistan doesn't have that much to offer or to export. How can we actually work on that? Because China is also opening its market to imports.
Okay, with China, I think to really have benefit from this relationship, where there is goodwill, we have to develop capacities.
Right.
You have mentioned about trade. What is our trade with China? About $10 million?
Right.
$10 billion?
10 billion, not million.
$10 billion.
Yes.
What is the trade between the United States and China, who are basically having a very tense relationship?
Yeah.
It is $500 billion.
Yeah.
Look at, for example, the ASEAN. What is the trade between ASEAN and China?
Right.
$730 billion. So today, I think this people-to-people interaction and understanding culture, etc., all these things, they are part of a very complex situation of this modern age, which is the age of technology, information, interaction, all that. So if, for example, our trade increases, if our economic interaction increases, then there would, of course, be also people-to-people interaction. Then we have to also start doing something about our internal situation.
Right.
Security, this, extremist violence.
Right.
This is not a small matter.
Right.
It has literally seeped into the psyche of many nations across the world that in Pakistan there is this problem.
Right.
You have mentioned about, I think you have mentioned about tourism. Pakistan was declared tourist destination for the Chinese people in 2003. An agreement was signed.
Right.
There were 7 companies which were ready to send their delegations here, and they had packages for constructing hotels, package tours, etc. All
right.
When 4 of their engineers were targeted in Gwadar.
Right. But that was
after that,
quite a while ago, right?
2003.
2003. We are talking about 2021 now. So there has been quite a lot of time.
But after that, 2021, if you look, we have gone through a very terrible time.
Right.
After all, when you say that we have defeated the terrorism.
Right.
We
had to, it cost us a lot.
We
Yeah.
had a problem.
Yeah.
Now we have overcome that problem, and now we have to see how we can again attract the Chinese,
Right.
and how we can also increase our economic capacity so that there is greater trade, greater economic interaction. You take the CPEC.
Right.
In CPEC, one of the very important area is the special economic zones.
Yeah.
And special economic zones we have to create. We
Right.
have to have a policy to
Right.
attract people.
Absolutely. And we have to actually work out what exactly is the nature of products that might be needed
Yes.
In China or in BRI.
For
So-
example, many Chinese industries are getting relocated.
Yeah.
Many of them are going to Southeast Asia.
Right.
They are not coming to Pakistan.
Yeah.
They can come to Pakistan provided we have policy and we have environment. which is
Absolutely,
conducive.
absolutely, sir. And this is a great, a discussion or topic to discuss. I'm told that we have to take a break. Viewers, when we come back from the break, I'm going to resume the discussion from right this point.